disrupted.
America that I fought.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz. Fantastic days so far. So there's been this thing circulating post-election, trying to wrap things together, trying to figure out, how Donald Trump got victorious and how the Democrats are continuing denial and down and just absolute atrocity throughout their own base, doing it to themselves. But one thing that's come to phrase is what they call the Joe Rogan effect. They said that this could possibly be one of the many reasons why Trump's favorability among younger people, because younger people, Rogan and Theo Vaughn and other podcasts, that Trump's influence of going on these platforms may have swung a lot of favorability among younger people. So the left was in scrambles by this because they don't understand how they don't have their own version of Joe. So I think Charlie Kirk put this perfectly. Charlie Kirk, who I genuinely have, good things with him, bad things with him. I don't agree with him on everything, but he makes a great point about this. The left is full of chatter of how they need their own liberal version of Joe Rogan and the like. But that thing is, the left used to have a liberal version of Joe Rogan. His name was Joe Rogan. He voted for Obama twice, endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2016, but because he's open-minded, will to talk to anyone, and doesn't mindlessly accept the latest propaganda, the left kicked him out. They censored his interview with Robert Malone and pressured Spotify to drop him. The left can't have their own version of Joe Rogan because everything that makes Rogan special makes it impossible for him left. So the fact that Joe Rogan, who is a very charismatic, open-minded, humble person, which is what makes him a mastermind at what he does and what makes him such a popular podcaster and a popular interviewer, is exactly that. He's willing to have conversations with different voices and different opinions. He's willing to have people from Ben Shapiro to Robert Malone to ex-CIA officials to other comics of both the left and the right. He had on Alex Jones. He'll have anybody on. He even had on just recently John Fetterman, Mr. Hey, you guys! So he's willing to have anyone on, and he had Donald Trump on. He had Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Well, Kamala Harris, everybody was saying that you need to go on Joe Rogan. Kamala Harris refused to do so. Kamala Harris backed away and said, no, we're going to do it in Washington. We're only going to do an hour, and we're going to do this and this and that and the other thing, and just made it worse for the possibility of Joe Rogan to actually interview her, which Joe Rogan said, forget it, I'm not doing it. And this is exactly the point. It's not Joe Rogan just magically became a right-winger, as some people would like to say. It's the fact that the left pushed away Joe Rogan. They kicked him out to the curb. They kicked him out of the curb for a long while now. They did it with COVID because he took ivermectin, which was prescribed to him by a doctor, and they said they was taking horse dewormer. They lied about that. They lied about Rogan, being infiltrator of right-wing ideology and how he had on people like even Crowder, how he's boasting them, how he's boasting for, fascists. They just constantly lie and lie and lie, and that drove Joe Rogan further and further away from the left. What this left is now. But it seems to be that this call for a liberal version of Joe Rogan scared a lot of people in the Democratic establishment, and maybe that's why this came out. This is from the Daily Beast. So Chris Wallace, know about that guy. Chris Wallace says he's quitting at CNN to build future in streaming. The veteran 77-year-old broadcaster will walk away from his 7-figure role in a watershed moment for cable TV. That's right, a 77-year-old stenographer for the corporate estate is walking away from CNN, a 7-figure salary, to maybe become the next Joe Rogan in his eyes. This is beyond parody. This is beyond parody. This should be something The Onion would be writing. Chris Wallace is quitting CNN after 3 years as one of the biggest stars, he exclusively told the Daily Beast Monday. The 77-year-old broadcaster said he will instead find a new home on an independent platform such as streaming or podcasting, which he describes as where the action seems to be. He highlighted how podcasts including Joe Rogan and Charlemagne the God had set the agenda during the presidential election, but added, I don't flatter myself to think that I have that short of reach. The stunning decision by Wallace to walk away from CNN at the end of his 3-year, 7-figure contract, rather than negotiate it, is a watershed moment for cable TV. It comes as other anchors face being fired or having salaries cut as declining ratings and cord cutting hit the industry line. Wallace was one of the main faces of CNN's election night coverage last week, correctly forecasting that Kamala Harris would need a miracle to win, as the first exit poll showed the depths of her electoral difficulty. He came to CNN in 2021 after 18 years on Fox News, where he interviewed Donald Trump repeatedly and earned praise for handling the fiery 2020 presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But he told the Daily Beast that his career in broadcast television, which began on local TV in Chicago in 1973 and spanned NBC's Today Show and Meet the Press, ABC's Primetime Live, and Fox News Sunday, before he joined CNN, will be over when his contract lapses at the end of the year, describing it as quite liberating. This is the first time in 55 years I've been between jobs, he said. I'm actually excited and liberated by that. So it sounds like because nobody's watching cable news, obviously, and because Chris Wallace thinks of himself as the celebrity that needs to branch out further, even though he is part of the disaster of why people aren't watching cable news, he's going to go into podcasting. So this could be the ultimate trying to get, that Joe Rogan essence the left is craving for. Instead of actually getting Joe Rogan and, actually apologizing for the faults that they made to push Joe Rogan away, they're going to get schmucks like Chris Wallace. I don't think it's going to go well for him. Just like his contract with CNN. He thought he was going to get better, equipment. Didn't he try to get a, interview lineup on CNN streaming platform? Yeah, how well did that go? How well did CNN Plus go? Yeah, probably not good, right? Not good. So, I want to show this because this is exactly why Joe Rogan got pushed away by the left, and why Joe Rogan, being a independent, being a moderate person, being an actual humble, great interviewer, and why so many people adore him and listen to his podcast on the regular, is because of the nuanced conversations that he has with people, including this. So when Dick Cheney announced he was supporting Kamala Harris, one of the biggest warmongers on the face of the earth, when he was deciding to endorse Kamala Harris's campaign, normally, for people like me that I would consider myself liberal, but I'm not, whatever this is, would be outraged by this. I'd be outraged. Why exactly a warmonger who should be serving prison time right now is openly supporting Kamala Harris? Why would you be championing that? Why would you be cheerleading that? Why would you be proud for that endorsement? But people on the left went ecstatic in support of this, and Joe Rogan is going to talk with this on JD Vance. Listen to this.
There's also the craziest thing that happened to me during this campaign was when Dick Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris and the left went crazy. Yay, Dick Cheney's on our side.
It's the craziest thing. I know. A guy, look at what they said
How
about
much
Dick
do you hate
Cheney.
Donald Trump? How much do you hate Donald Trump that
It's crazy.
you're willing to choose Dick Cheney over him?
Man.
And that Dick Cheney is all of a sudden a good guy? The engineer behind the Iraq War is responsible for how many people dead?
Hundreds of thousands.
I can't even look at the Dick Cheney face next to this video. It's so bad. It literally looks like a cartoonish Batman villain. It's like the Penguin. I'm coming after you and your oil. Oh my God. It still drives me wild. It still drives me wild that people can call themselves liberal, people can call themselves lefties, and be okay with an open endorsement by warmongers, by evil satanic creatures like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney and George Bush and the most villainous people on earth, and be okay with that endorsement. Not only be okay with it, but support it. They were cheerleading that. Oh, look, Dick Cheney's on our side. Liz Cheney's on our side. George Bush is on our side. George Bush was a good man. Did he not fly us into war? Did he not scare the entire population? Did he not? Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But 20 years ago, were you not in protest of George Bush's presidency? Was there not people out in the street saying, not my president, not my president? Now all of a sudden, he supports Kamala Harris. Oh, look at what a sweetheart he is. He's going to do a finger painting picture of him giving the finger to the rest of America. Such a good guy. Look at him being so soft and cuddly to Obama. It literally makes me sick. But Joe Rogan points this out perfectly. Try imagine Chris Wallace doing this. He won't. Ever.
Maybe millions of Arabs, certainly
Yeah.
thousands of Americans. The biggest world historical catastrophe, I think, in the history of the United States of America was the Iraq War. Because unlike other mistakes that we've made, it was truly unforced. There was no reason in hindsight to do it. There was nothing that we got out of it. We lost, so many innocent people. We spent trillions of dollars. We, I think, destroyed the social cohesion that we had gotten after 9/11, because you remember, like after 9/11, everybody was an American. We were all on the same team, Democrat or Republican. We destroyed that, and we created in Iraq effectively a proxy of Iran, which it's telling now that 20 years later, the biggest foreign policy threat that we face in the Middle East is Iran. And we created a massive ally of the Iranians in the Iraqis, and none of the people who actually presided over that disaster are saying, maybe we really, really screwed up, and maybe we should reevaluate some of our assumptions.
Joe Rogan having a nuanced conversation, accurately pointing out the real substantial flaws of these people. With J.D. Vance. That's why people listen to Joe Rogan. That is why people adore Joe Rogan. That's why he gets a huge audience from both the left and the right. And why he's able to build this fungus audience towards mainstream media hack jobs like Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow and Joe Scarborough and the small one on George Stephanopoulos. All of them. This is why. And that's why they went full force on attacking Joe Rogan instead of learning from Joe Rogan, saying, hey, he's building such a tremendous audience. He's a comedian. He's a UFC announcer. Maybe we should learn from that and understand how he's becoming successful. Maybe instead of having these hacky conversations like you see on friggin' late night television, for God's sakes, maybe instead of doing that and selling yourself out to the corporate estate, maybe actually having civil discussions. This is why I would prefer if, friggin' daytime television, if that went away and they just show reruns of Joe Rogan interviews. Like, forget The View, forget all that shit. Just put up a 3-hour conversation, Joe Rogan and whoever. People will definitely tune in to your channel. People will definitely tune in to broadcast television if they did that. But I think it's because the fact that Joe Rogan, for one thing, is totally independent. He is not tied to any broadcast, corporation. He's not tied to any partnership with advertisers. And he's built himself an audience because he's actually a nuanced, genuine person. And because he's a nuanced, genuine person, he's willing to have conversations with anybody. And meanwhile, the tolerant left took every opportunity, instead of learning from Joe Rogan and finding out exactly why he went the direction of ivermectin, why he, had conversations with on the right, instead of learning from um his side of the perspective, they pushed him away. They pushed him further and further and further away. Then now Joe Rogan is considered this alt-right credence. And now they're considering this the Joe Rogan effect, that having people like JD Vance and Donald Trump on and having this built up audience of people watching podcasts instead of legacy media that's dying out quickly. And that's why Chris Wallace is panicking on, oh no, I got to start streaming service because nothing wrong with me. It's CNN's fault. It's their fault. So that's why they're in panic mode. That's why they're in panic mode. And rather than taking the time to, figure out why they're going wrong, why they're going belly up, they're just going to say, oh, well, I'll just start a podcast and do the exact same crap. And then their podcast is going to tank the bed. I mean, it's the same kind of conundrum that Conan O'Brien had. Conan O'Brien, who's been a late night talk show host for many years, many years, had a show canceled in 2019 or 8? Fairly recently. Conan O'Brien went from that he was going to start up a podcast. He was going to be different from the late night talk show. Okay, that's interesting. How is it going to be different? It wasn't. Conan O'Brien just basically took the exact same show that he's done for years on late night television and just brought it to podcast form. That's all he did. And then you get, articles of Variety saying that he's revolutionizing this. Like, God damn it. So, Chris Wallace, nothing's going to change with Chris Wallace. And whether or not he starts a podcast, I don't care, but why they can't hold a candle to someone like Joe Rogan. Someone who's a genuine, honest person, willing to engage in conversation and not just be partisan hack or whatever divisive team that they're on.